been the manager there for about 10 years now. Made a fair few changes in the last sort of 10 years, I guess, and sort of tell you some of that now. So we're farming, total area is just under 1,300 hectares now, and we're running 3 full-time staff as well as myself. We were, until 5 years ago, we were solely an arable farm. We've been up and down with our staff numbers. We've tried cutting our staff right back to the bare minimum. Staff are our number one asset. We're coming into a world now where we're finding it harder and harder to find good people to come on the farm. The demands for a farm worker, with the technology that we're using, the hours that we're making people work, it's getting harder and harder. We've had somebody on the farm now, he's in his 43rd year on the farm, and once we're going through that generation, the next generation's coming through, we are finding it increasingly hard to actually get people on the farm and retain them. So we've actually gone back up to more staff than what you'd typically find on an arable farm for our area, and this is why we've been sort of looking at other ways as well that we can sort of offset some of that labour requirement. So the crops we're growing, we're growing a rotation now: wheat, barley, rape, beans, oats, linseed, pea, sugar beet. We've got cover and catch crops in our rotation, but we've also now got grass in our rotation. Sort of talk more about the grass as we go forward, but sort of some of the problems we've seen in our area, we're in a combinable crop rotation. If we roll back sort of 6-7 years ago, we were just growing wheat, rape, and maybe beans on our farm. So sort of monocrop culture, very short, tight rotations, and that came with a fair few problems. We've now got sort of 90 hectares of countryside stewardship options. We've got other environmental land in that total area as well. But with that 90 hectares of stewardship, people perhaps don't realise it all the time, but at certain times of the year, this has got quite a labour requirement. And actually, to get the best out of that as well, again, we need to pull staff from the arable side to actually work with it. We've also got 38 hectares of grass leys in our rotation. This is actually part of our main now arable rotation. Sheep sort of come on to a little bit more now. We're now up to 350 Poll Dorset ewes, and as of 3 weeks ago, we've now got 1,000 pigs on the farm. So yeah, slightly steep learning curve for us, but I'll explain some of the reasons why we've sort of gone down that route as well. So this is a typical arable field for us. I've actually specifically picked this field, but any of you that sort of sit on the combine, harvest your fields every year or look at yield maps, you always realise that actually there's always certain parts of the farm or a field which you've sort of got no reason why they always seem to yield better than anywhere else. So actually talking to a now retired employee who'd been around the farm now for more than 60 years, this was actually the last grass field that was taken out of grassland that he'd known, and this actually happened before he was even working on the farm. So yeah, I don't think there's any coincidence there that the last grass field just so happens to be one of the highest yielding parts of the farm. So this again, sort of knowing this, made me want to start to look into why is this, why are we seeing the benefits from previous grassland. So sort of show you some of our organic matter tests that we've done. I'm always a bit cautious when we're talking about organic matter. As you can see here, just looking at the difference between 2011, 2017, you automatically think, oh, we've increased all of our organic matter. We're doing really well. It's 2 different testing methods, probably taken at slightly different times of the year as well. Different soil moisture, different things going on. Is there a pointer on this, Alice?
Yeah.
I think I've highlighted it. But if you look at this anyway, I've highlighted it. So we've got Lucas Hill and Bungalow there. It's in one there. if you look down here on the scale, it's on the lower end of our fields back in 2011. Whereas if you look at it now, coming into 2017, it's now separated out. You'll see there that there's quite a significant difference. If we look at it on a soil map, if any of you are aware of soil scanning, we've got very varying soil types across the farm. The whole farm is mapped for soil type by soil. The scale here, you can see number 1 is pretty well pure sand, whereas we come across and get into heavier clay soils, and this is just in one field. So as we go through there, it's on the light sand on the far end of the field. So the first 5 years I was on the farm, even without looking at a yield map, every year when we come to combine the field, the crop on this end of the field had died off. We would never take any yield off of it. So we just sort of questioned why we were continuing to farm it with an arable rotation. So this is the field back in 2011. You can see the whole fields there work together. Roll on to 2018. Actually the satellite, because I'm sure you're all aware of the drought we went through last year, you can see it's really showing up the soil types. Looking on that year, probably should have picked out the other half of the field and taken the whole lot out. But you can see on the far end, on what was a very light sand, we've now taken it out of the arable rotation, put it into grass paddocks, and if you look back to the previous soil map, you could probably imagine what would have happened to that arable crop last year had we have left it in there then. So we're then using it as a grass field, and on a soil type, it wouldn't typically be very high in organic matter. You can see just by having it into grass for 5 years, I don't know if that 9.8 is necessarily a very accurate measure of organic matter, but we're definitely doing something there that's putting something back into the soil. So that, again, we're definitely seeing some benefits of demonstrating that we're using the grass and getting some quick benefits back there. Also as well, talked about, we were in a rotation where we were just growing sort of 2 or 3 different crops, very tight rotation. I'm sure most of you are aware of blackgrass. Thankfully we don't have huge blackgrass problems on the farm. We have it, but at the same time very well aware that we don't want to have a major blackgrass problem. And I think actually having these tight rotations, relying on sort of 1 or 2 different crops. Obviously our chemistry, our armoury of chemistry is getting smaller and smaller, and I think we need to start looking at different ways that we can sort of get on top of that. I've focused mainly on blackgrass here, but also again, if you look at the world of growing rape nowadays, certainly in our area, rape is becoming very, very hard. It's a very high risk crop to grow. We've got problems with flea beetle. We're one of the earlier counties of growing rape in the country, and again rape had been grown sort of 1 in 2 or 1 in 3 years. It's probably, again, it's no coincidence actually, Essex, Hertfordshire, they were some of the first counties that really started to see the full sort of impact of cabbage stem flea beetle. So again, we sort of wanted to look at how we can sort of stretch our rotation out on a soil type generally. It's not necessarily sort of, it's not easy to just go out there. There's not a whole line of list of crops that we could start picking off the shelf that we were able to grow. So we needed to be a bit more sort of imaginative how we got to that. So this is why I started to want to look at putting grass into our rotation. And for the problems and the reasons that we were talking about really, one, we wanted to start improving our soil health. We wanted to start bringing the farm back to the first slide I showed you with the yield map, where we were seeing the good part of the field. We wanted to improve our yields on the rest of the fields. So I wanted to look at the grass to help with our soil health first. The problem we've had with grass is we've put grass leys into the rotation, and I'll talk about the sheep in a minute, but you can see we've split the field up into paddocks here. And what we tend to find when we're putting grass leys into our rotation, at certain times of the year we don't have enough grass, At other times of the year we've got too much grass and we just don't know what to do with the grass. So by doing these sort of block paddocks that we've got, when the grass gets too far ahead of what we're doing with our sheep, we're actually finding sort of alternative sources to outlays to get rid of the grass as well. So we've actually managed to put some of our grass in with a local AD plant, so they're paying us for the grass. We're also working with a local beef farmer as well, who's quite keen to obviously take the grass with him there. And actually it's quite satisfying as well to see the black grass. It's the only way I've actually found of someone paying us to grow black grass. So it's quite nice to see that disappearing off the farm. So yeah, with the grass, about 5 years ago, it raised a few eyebrows in a mainly arable area, but we took the decision to bring some sheep onto the farm. And we started with about 50 ewes, and we've gone for the breed Poll Dorset. Are any of you aware of Poll Dorset sheep? Right? Yes. Well, Poll Dorset sheep, they originate from Dorset, but they've been bred through in Australia, done some wonderful things, and brought them back without any horns. But the main thing about Poll Dorset is it's a very flexible breed. And it's able to lamb. It's the only breed that can naturally lamb at any time of the year. And this was quite key to what we wanted to do, because we wanted the sheep to fit in with our arable system. And I think we've managed to do that. Some of my staff might not agree sometimes. But we're obviously on an arable farm. We're busy at certain times of the year. And we've geared it up now that we've finished drilling on the last day of October. And the last 3 years we've timed it to the day. We've finished drilling on the 31st of October, and the first lamb has dropped on the 1st of November. Like I say, our staff would probably like to at least have a weekend off to have a bit of a breather. But we've managed to actually time it into what would normally be a quiet time of our year. So yeah, the flexible breed, they're fairly easy to manage. So we don't feed our sheep any concentrates. It's all forage based. So it's quite a low input system. Talk about the staff. We want to use the staff that we already have. And also as well, because we're in an arable area, we don't actually have much access to grass. And as I say, at certain times of the year, we've just got too much grass that we don't know what to do with. So we just can't put hundreds and hundreds of acres into grassland, because we've only got so much of a market that we can actually get rid of it. At other times of the year, we just don't have enough grass. So actually where it works with the sheep, lambing them in November, we've actually been growing some cover crops, particularly on our lighter soils in front of spring crops. So we've been actually, as we've been at peak numbers, we've been able to put all of our ewes and lambs onto the cover crops, actually use the cover crops for two things, both one trying to put some soil health back into the soil, but also as well it's a feed source that we can actually rear our lambs through the winter months when the grass isn't growing. At the same time as well, we're halfway through our slaughtering at the moment, so we're producing a lamb which is sort of out of season. They're classed as new season lambs. We're aiming to hit the Easter market. And we're trying to make this premium market. It's been a bit more of a challenge this year because Easter is later than what we are, so we've had lambs coming through. But again, we've built our numbers up gradually because we want to actually make sure we've got the market there before we actually have too many lambs that we can't get rid of them. My target is that all of our lambs, we're going to average a price of £100 or more net after slaughtering costs and everything else. And up until now, we've managed to achieve that every year. So we've got contracts with, we're actually dealing with a butcher that's supplying a lot of the top restaurants in London, but we're getting into some of the local butchers as well. And actually it's a very, I don't actually eat lamb, so I'm probably not the best person, but I'm told it eats really, really well. As a breed, when we take it to market, the livestock dealers look at it and they think, don't really know what to do with this. but actually the people in the restaurants and the housewives really, really like it. So that's why, again, we've only tried to grow the numbers as we're able to actually find the market for them. I don't know, are we going to look at this later, Jim?
We are a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll just touch on it. So also this year as well, we will see a bit of what's going on later, but we've taken part in a herbal lay trial as well, and the idea with this is to actually try and get a better measure of actually what the grass lay, bringing it back into an arable rotation, is doing. And we've got both grass and clover lays and herbal lays, and the idea is if we can actually grow the grass lay without having to put many fertiliser inputs into it as well. So I think we'll probably touch on that with Phil a bit later. And then the pigs. We took a fairly major decision, and as I said, the pigs arrived 3 weeks ago. So we're contract rearing 1,000 pigs for BQP. And again, the reason why we've sort of gone into this with the livestock, we're obviously going to get the muck back out of the pig unit, which is going to go back onto the arable fields. But also it's this labour thing as well. We're able to use the existing labour we've got, and we've actually got it that one person, our extra man, is now having all of his wages are being paid for by both the sheep and the pig unit, but it still frees up time for him to actually help out on the arable side and doing the stewardship things when we need him to as well. So it's just finding things that actually fit with our business and actually benefit it, not just financially, but also sort of from an integrated point of view as well, where we get the arable, the grass, the muck, and everything else to sort of come in tune together. Thank you.
Perfect. And just to add to what Jeremy's been talking through, we've actually got a little video to show you, which my colleague somewhere went and filmed during the day last week.
Line in mode.
We introduced the livestock, the sheep, to the farm about 5 or 6 years ago now. We wanted to get some grass lays into our rotation. We've taken out areas of unproductive arable land and put it into grassland. We're currently running about 350 ewes, so the reason we chose the Pole Dorsets as well, being able to lamb any time of the season, lambing in November, means that the lambs are ready for the Easter market in March, April time, where there's a premium which we can put against it as well. Also, it's because we don't want the whole farm to go down to grass. We're at peak numbers with our lambs through the winter time, and we're able to use our cover crops, so we're able to actually load the sheep up on that over winter time and rear the lambs on that. So with our grass lays, we split the field up into multiple paddocks. We use that to rotate the sheep round, so we can graze a paddock hard and then allow it to rest for a 6-week period before we bring the sheep back round again. The first field we chose, we picked one of our fields where we had a bit of a blackgrass population, completely free from what we've seen so far of grass weeds. So we've got a nice weed-free wheat crop, and hopefully the soil structure as well is going to be really good. As we look down through here, see we've got a nice structure going on there, plenty of worms in there, and the roots are really starting to get down. It's alive with worms there, look. Plenty of drainage channels right through the structure. This is the second grass field we've put into a grass lay, and certainly in the first field that we did, we really saw the organic matter levels go up from when it went from an arable field into a grass lay and then back to an arable field again. You can see through the root map there, it's definitely restructuring and putting some good organic matter back into the soil. So since we've introduced the grass lays back into the arable rotation as well, we've seen a few different species of birds move back into the farm. You can probably hear the skylarks up above, although we've always had them with the arable fields. When you walk through the grass fields, it's just a constant sing from them. We've also, in the last few years, since the grass has been back here as well, red kites have moved back into the area. And as you come down the drive past the grass field, there's always thousands of field fares out there at this time of year as well. I've made quite a radical decision to go into pigs. It's always been looking at ways that we can make our business more diverse and not have to just solely rely on one income stream, such as an arable farm. Pigs kind of fitted the bill because it could work again along with the sheep, could work alongside our existing arable labour. So it works, it's B&B, we provide the building, the straw and the labour. We get the benefit of having the muck coming out of it to go back onto the arable land, but also as well the income is quite useful. About a year ago we took Josh on, he came to work for us. We've always wanted to run with sort of a bit labour heavy for what the size of our arable unit would be. Our arable is always at the most productive when we carry one too many good staff. So we're always looking at different ways that we can actually offset some of that labour and justify having it.
So in here we have just over 1,000 pigs. As at the moment we've got them split into balls down this end and gilts down the end here. There's roughly about 60 in a pen, all monitored through the RSPCA Freedom Food Assurance Scheme. So these pigs are actually on the highest welfare you can possibly get on farm.